Welcome back to the Deep Dive. You know we love to jump headfirst into Paralogic.com, and this is episode 12, our 12th Deep Dive.
Number 12 already. Time flies.
It really does, and it feels like there's never a shortage of interesting stuff to talk about. Today is no different. We've got cybersecurity, a bit of crypto, even a little international drama. You know the drill, though. This is your quick rundown. Make sure to head to the site to get all the details.
That's right. Always more to discover on Paralogic.com.
Definitely. Oh, and one more thing before we really dive in. Nothing we talk about here is financial or trading advice. You got to do your own research.
Absolutely.
Okay, now we can get started. With all the stories this week, cybersecurity really jumps out, from some cool new stuff to some things that honestly make you want to double-check your passwords.
Yeah, no kidding. Seems like every week there's a new threat or vulnerability to worry about.
This week is no different. But let's start with some good news. The iOS 18.2 update gives users more control over photo metadata.
Yeah, I think that's a big step in the right direction for privacy. A lot of people don't realize how much information is hidden in the metadata of a simple photo. Your location, the time it was taken, even the device you used.
It's not something most people think about. So is Apple leading the way here? Any other companies jumping on board?
It's hard to say if they're leading the way, but they're definitely making a statement. We'll have to see if others follow suit.
Okay, well, let's move from good news to a little less good news. The FBI and CISA are recommending everyone switch to encrypted messaging apps. And this all stems from the Salt Typhoon cyber attacks that have been linked to China.
Yeah, those attacks are focused on stealing metadata, specifically from U.S. communication networks. So the FBI and CISA are urging people to switch to more secure platforms.
So what? China is snooping on our metadata?
Well, they're definitely interested in it. And it's not just the Chinese government either. Metadata can be valuable to all sorts of bad actors.
I guess it makes sense. I never thought about it that way before. So what's the biggest vulnerability?
The communication between iPhones and Androids, actually.
Really?
Yeah. When you're using something like SMS or RCS, you're not getting the same level of protection as iMessage or WhatsApp, which offer end-to-end encryption.
So basically, our text messages might not be as private as we think they are.
That's right. And that's why the FBI and CISA are recommending people switch to those encrypted alternatives.
Good advice. Looks like Signal and WhatsApp are the safest bets.
Definitely. End-to-end encryption is the way to go.
And moving on from our phones to our computers, it looks like phishing is still going strong. This campaign using corrupted Word documents is particularly sneaky.
Oh yeah, that one's pretty clever. They're exploiting Word's file recovery feature to get around security software.
So they're intentionally corrupting the documents to make them look harmless.
Exactly. They make it seem like it's just a normal corrupted file, but hidden inside is a malicious QR code.
And if someone scans that QR code,
They take into a phishing website designed to steal their login credentials.
yikes. It's incredible how creative some of these phishing tactics are.
And effective, unfortunately. People need to be extra careful about what they open and what links they click on.
Speaking of cybersecurity reminders, Zello, the push-to-talk app, is encouraging users to reset their passwords after a potential security breach.
Good reminder to always practice good password hygiene.
Now, for something a bit lighter, but still a little creepy, have you seen this thing about smartphones showing fake cracked screens caused by viruses?
Oh yeah, the good old scareware tactic.
I have to admit, it's pretty effective, though, playing on people's fear of their phone breaking.
Oh, it absolutely is. People see that cracked screen and they panic. That's when they're most vulnerable.
So what's the best defense?
Don't panic. Verify any warnings with trusted security software. And never download apps from unofficial sources. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Good advice. Okay, let's lighten the mood a little further with some international drama. Did you see this story about South Korea almost declaring martial law and the subsequent Bitcoin crash that followed?
Oh yeah, that was wild. President Yoon Suk-yeol declared martial law because of some perceived threats from North Korea, and it caused absolute chaos in the markets.
So Bitcoin crashed because of martial law in South Korea.
Yeah, the price of Bitcoin on South Korean exchanges dropped by almost 30% immediately after the announcement. It was nuts.
Wow. Talk about volatility. So what happened? Did martial law actually go into effect?
Well, the South Korean legislature blocked it, actually. Seems like they weren't too happy about the whole thing either.
What a roller coaster.
Yeah.
So it was all over within a few hours.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But it definitely shows how much of an impact global events can have on the financial markets.
Especially in the world of crypto.
Oh yeah, crypto is particularly susceptible to this kind of volatility.
That's for sure. Speaking of crypto, the XRP ledger is making some waves by lowering its reserve requirements. I think this is going to have a big impact.
It could. It's definitely a move towards greater accessibility. By reducing the minimum amount of XRP people need to hold, they're hoping to attract more users.
It makes sense. But are there any downsides to this?
Potentially. Reducing reserve requirements can sometimes make a network less secure. It's a bit of a trade-off, so it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Well, we've got to stay vigilant, especially with the holidays coming up. We're bound to see an increase in those crypto phishing scams.
Definitely. Those scams are a year-round threat, but tend to spike during the holidays. People are more likely to let their guard down when they're caught up in the holiday spirit.
What are some things to watch out for?
Double-check those URLs, be wary of unsolicited messages, and remember, if someone is asking for your private keys, it's a scam.
Right. Don't give away those keys. All right, so moving on to another big story in the crypto world, Grayscale has proposed a spot Solana ETF.
Yeah, this one could be huge. A spot Solana ETF would make investing in Solana much more accessible for a lot of people.
Now, for the folks who aren't too familiar with the crypto world, can you quickly explain what a spot ETF is?
A spot ETF basically tracks the price of an underlying asset, in this case, Solana. It allows people to invest in Solana without having to actually buy and hold the cryptocurrency directly.
So it's a more convenient way to invest in Solana.
Exactly. And that's why Grayscale's proposal is so significant. It could lead to a huge influx of investment into Solana.
Okay, so we've got a potential Solana ETF on the horizon. And there's also that report from CoinShares showing record inflows into digital asset funds. It really does seem like institutional investors are starting to take crypto seriously.
There's definitely been a shift in sentiment. A lot of institutional investors now see crypto as a legitimate asset class.
So the big question, are we on the cusp of another altcoin season?
There's definitely potential for it. With all this institutional money flowing into the crypto market and stablecoin liquidity on the rise, the conditions are definitely right for a surge in altcoin prices.
But of course, we all know how volatile crypto can be, so proceed with caution.
Always good advice.
All right, that's a lot to digest, but there's even more to explore. We'll be back in part 2 to discuss blockchain technology and its role in global security, along with a few other stories we didn't get to today.
And as always, we encourage you to head over to paralogic.com to read the full articles and get all the details. There's a ton of great information there. All right, welcome back to part 2 of our Paralogic Deep Dive.
We've still got plenty to uncover, so let's get right to it. Before we jump back into crypto, there's been a development with the Corporate Transparency Act that we should talk about.
Yeah, you're talking about that nationwide injunction, right?
That's the one. It's put a halt to the Act's compliance requirements, leaving a lot of businesses unsure of what comes next.
For those who might not be familiar, the Corporate Transparency Act basically aims to make it tougher for criminals to hide behind shell companies.
Makes sense, right? More transparency, less room for shady dealings.
Yeah, the idea is to make companies disclose their beneficial owners, the real people who control the company.
Seems pretty straightforward, so why the injunction?
Well, there's been pushback from those who argue it steps on privacy rights and creates unnecessary hurdles for businesses that are playing by the rules.
So, bit of a legal tug-of-war.
Yeah.
We'll have to wait and see what the courts decide.
Definitely. Moving on to something a bit more positive, blockchain is in the news again, but this time it's not about Bitcoin or any of the usual suspects.
You're talking about blockchain intelligence.
Right.
Using the tech to track transactions and keep an eye out for anything illegal.
Exactly. It's become a crucial tool in the fight against financial crimes and global security threats. There's a great podcast episode that dives deep into this. It's called The Journeyman, and they interviewed Adam Zarazinski, the CEO of Inca Digital.
Oh, yeah, I saw that one. Inca Digital, they're big in the blockchain intelligence space, right?
Yeah, they are. Zarazinski talks about how they're using super advanced analytics to track those blockchain transactions, looking for patterns that could point to fraud, money laundering, even sanctions evasion.
So they're basically using blockchain's transparency to expose any criminal activity.
That's the idea. And the implications are huge. Think about combating terrorism, for example.
Yeah, if you can track the money, you can potentially cut off funding to these groups. It's amazing how versatile blockchain technology really is.
Right. And speaking of tech, it's worth mentioning that recent Zipcar outage. Their app went down, leaving a lot of users stranded.
Ouch, that's got to be frustrating. Especially if you rely on their service for transportation.
It really highlights how we're becoming increasingly dependent on these app-based services.
Yeah, and it makes you think about the importance of having a backup plan just in case.
Absolutely. Can't always rely on technology to work perfectly, right?
Now, before we move to the last part, let's go back to those new privacy features in Apple's iOS 18.2 update.
The metadata controls for photos, right?
Exactly. It's a big win for privacy advocates, but it does raise some questions.
We're thinking about law enforcement. They often use photo metadata in investigations.
That's one of the concerns. There's a balance to be struck between individual privacy and security.
Yeah, it's a complex issue, and it's not just on the tech companies to figure it out either. We, the users, need to be more aware of the data we're sharing.
Couldn't agree more. It's about being mindful of our digital footprint.
Finding that balance between convenience and being in control of our data.
All right, that's a great point to end this part of our deep dive on. Join us in the final part as we explore the wider implications of all these stories.
It's been a fascinating journey so far, and there's still much more to discuss.
And we're back, wrapping up our Paralogic deep dive with part 3 of episode number 12.
It's been a wild ride so far.
It really has. And, looking back at all these stories, one thing that really sticks out to me is the need to be vigilant.
Yeah. You see that in everything from cybersecurity to the financial markets.
It's like no matter what you're doing online, you've got to stay informed and be proactive.
It's a whole new level of responsibility, right?
Yeah.
We've got all this information at our fingertips, but it's not always accurate, and technology is changing so fast.
Yeah. And it's easy to get overwhelmed. Makes me think of that story about the fake cracked screens.
The scareware.
Uh-huh. Such a simple trick, but it works because it preys on people's fear.
It's a perfect example. We really need to be more digitally literate.
It's like having the knowledge and the critical thinking skills to really navigate the digital world.
Spot on. It's about making informed choices, not just protecting ourselves, but helping to create a more secure digital space for everyone.
Yeah, like a collective responsibility. It all ties back to that interconnectedness we were talking about earlier. It makes you wonder, are we at some sort of turning point with technology and its impact on society?
I think so, yeah. We've got AI, blockchain, quantum computing, all of these forces colliding, and we're grappling with some big questions.
It feels like we're writing the rules for this new era, and the decisions we make now will have consequences for a long time to come.
That's the challenge, isn't it? It's both exhilarating and a little scary.
It is. But going through all these stories on Paralogic.com makes me cautiously optimistic. There are so many smart people out there who are trying to figure this stuff out.
Yeah, there's a real commitment to finding solutions.
And that's where we come in. As users, we've got to approach tech with curiosity, caution, and a sense of responsibility.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So, as we wrap up this episode, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought. Stay informed, be vigilant, but don't be afraid to explore, to go beyond your comfort zone, and really engage with the world around you.
Curiosity is key. Lifelong learning, seeking out new perspectives. That's how we grow and adapt.
Exactly. So stay curious, stay informed, and keep those conversations going. The future is what we make it.
And that brings us to the end of another deep dive. Big thanks to Paralogic.com for always providing such insightful content.
Make sure to check out their website for all the articles we've talked about today. And if you enjoyed this episode, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends.
Until next time, keep exploring and keep diving deep.